Okay, so here's another example of factoring by grouping. So we have 12x cubed plus 2x squared minus 30x minus 5. So again, you always start out by saying, okay, is there a greatest common factor I can take out? Well, it's looking promising with 12, 2, and 30, but then we've got this 5, which totally throws it off. So no, we do not have a greatest common factor because there's nothing that 12, 2, 30, and 5 can all divide by that isn't 1. All right, so with that out of the way, then what we're going to do is we're going to group it. We've got an even number of terms, so let's try grouping it. So we group the first two terms, and we group the last two terms. Now this is not multiplying. I put that negative in with the 30, so I'm going to put a little plus sign here because it's technically plus negative 30x. So I just want to show that the two sets of parentheses are adding. They're not multiplying together. Because if you group it, it kind of looks like, oh, wait a minute, are they multiplying? No, they're not. They're adding. And because of that adding, that means that now I can say, okay, I'm going to look at my two sets of parentheses. I'm going to factor them separately. So 12x cubed plus 2x squared. Well, now I've got a greatest common factor because it's just 12 and 2. So 12 and 2, the biggest number they can divide by is 2. And then x cubed and x squared. Remember, the smaller exponent is our limiting factor. So the greatest number of x's I can take out would be an x squared. Okay, so that being said, now let's look at what we're going to be left with when we divide by 2x squared. We're going to divide both of these by 2x squared. Okay, so 12 divided by 2 is 6. X cubed divided by x squared, 3 minus 2. So I just left with x to the 1 or just an x. Plus, now 2 divided by 2, well that's 1. And x squared divided by x squared, that's also 1. So if you remember, anything divided by itself equals 1. So I'm just left with a 1 here. Okay, so that's our first set of parentheses. So now we're going to say plus, and we're going to do our second set of parentheses. Ideally, in order to get factoring by grouping to work, I want to end up in parentheses the same thing as what I got over here. Okay, so I want it to be the same thing. So let's look at this. I've got a lot of minuses here. So let's look. This is negative 30 and negative 5, or 30 and 5. Well, the biggest thing I can factor out would be a 5. So let's talk about that. If I factor out just a 5, I'd have negative 30 divided by 5, so I'd be left with negative 6x minus 1. That's close to 6x plus 1, but I want these to be positive in here. So I'm going to factor out a negative 5 because I want their signs to change. So factor out a negative 5. So if I divide by each of these by negative 5, negative 30 divided by negative 5 is positive 6. So I'd have 6x. And then negative 5 divided by negative 5, well, that's a positive 1. So I get 6x plus 1 inside there. Okay, I'll get rid of that. There we go. All right, so now it's looking a lot more promising because as I look at these two terms, as I look at this term and I look at this term, I look at what do they have in common? Well, they've got the 6x plus 1 in common. So what I can do is I can factor out a 6x plus 1 from each of them. So I have 6x plus 1. So I divide each of these by 6x plus 1. That cancels. And I divide this one by 6x plus 1. That cancels. And I'm left with, out here, I'm left with 2x squared plus negative 5, or plus a negative is the same thing as minus. So 2x squared minus 5. And I can't go any further on 6x plus 1. 6 and 1 don't have a greatest common factor. And 2 and 5 don't have a greatest common factor. So I'm going to call this good. 6x plus 1 times 2x squared minus 5. And again, you can always check it by doing the multiplication and multiplying it back out. So I'm going to do 6x. I'm going to do 1 times everything. So 6x times 2x squared is 12x cubed. 6x times negative 5 is negative 30x. 1 times 2x squared is plus 2x squared. And 1 times negative 5 is minus 5. And remember, we always have to put it in standard form. So I'll have 12x cubed plus 2x squared minus 30x minus 5. which is indeed what we started with. Okay, so we are done.